Okay, just taking a moment to land here in the space. Noticing what is around your body. Noticing what is supporting you. And then noticing the body itself. And bringing your awareness inside, into your headspace. Letting any tension release from the body. I have a spot that has been bugging me for decades. And I finally figured out why the other day, which doesn't make it 100% better, but it really helps, is that my right piriformis, which is a deep muscle of the hip that kind of opposes the hip flexors on the outside, like above the glutes, inside, underneath the glute muscles. My right piriformis is never relaxed. It just does not know how. It's just always clenched. And so I have been learning in the last week, since I made this realization, how to send it the signal that says, hey, it's safe to chill out. And that is, it's hard. It's hard to rebuild these motor pathways that are so deeply ingrained in our bodies, especially as we enter into, middle age, solid adulthood, looking at our Uranus oppositions, whether those are coming up or in the rearview. And yeah, it's a challenging relationship and a challenging time to be in relationship to the flesh, because up until now, there's always been like a possibility of something improving, and now it's like, well, you just got to keep what you got. Like, sure, you can improve in aspects, but yeah, I'm just kind of learning to make peace with starting to be over the hill, I guess. But yeah, with age comes wisdom, of course, and it's not all bad. It's just a reframing. Yeah. So for me, the answer is to subtly engage the pelvic floor and the deep muscles of the inner core, especially the lower core, lower transverse abdominal. And I don't have to clench them. I just have to say hello to them, right? And just kind of gently say, like, look, we can support this structure in another way, because I think that piriformis has been holding all of that energy this whole time. Oh. Just holding space for whatever bubbles up, whatever makes itself known right now. And in my body, just spending time with those subtle movements, those micro movements of the pelvis. And accepting that being upright is, there's never going to be a full relaxation because something has to hold that base, right? And I think this is a lot of the work that I kind of tend to speed through when I'm doing my setup for meditation. Because this is where the grounding cord attaches, right? The root chakra. This is where the earth presses up against and gives support to the body, to the torso, whether that is directly through sitting, pelvis on the ground, or if that is through standing and the bones of the legs are coming into the pelvis, to then that the sacrum becomes the keystone of that arch, right? So I'm just really checking in with that today and allowing allowing myself to be surprised by these waves of emotion that are just bubbling up as I'm connecting with my root. So I was having a conversation on Threads today with a mutual who I deeply respect, Ashley Stinson, and she had mentioned something about something that had come up in one of her sessions about how whether a baby's first cry was the impetus or coincident with the activation of their root chakra at birth. And so, I mean, my gut is yes, absolutely. And I remember, I have a conscious memory of feeling this, so after, in the childbirth process, right? So in the middle of birth, right? After the baby has come out, I remember that there was this kind of a liminal space, and that makes sense, right? That totally makes sense that there would be childbirth is a portal, so of course you're in a liminal space, but between the baby coming, the physical act of childbirth, right? And then I remember being given my child, right, and my baby, and putting her on my chest. And I remember that there was kind of this moment where, there was some uncertainty. And I don't think I think this is just inherent in the process, and especially in the more gentle, less interventionist environment that I gave birth in with a midwife in a real birth center, not a hospital, and in a cozy den, essentially, with medical personnel there, but in a den, in a nest, not in a place with bright lights or loud noises and things like that, other than the loud noises I made. But I remember that there's this liminal space in between having her, like her landing on my chest, and when she first cried. And it wasn't a lot of crying. It wasn't, and this wasn't done within the practice of like causing the baby pain in order to make her cry or anything like that, which, certainly is done. But it was just like like she had taken a breath, of course. The midwife who had caught her wasn't gonna, she was gonna make sure that she was breathing right before she handed me the baby. But there was this moment where she took a deep breath and then like let out like a good wail. And we were all like, yes, like, get it. Yeah. And that, I'm just remembering that there was the energy shifted, right, within her little body at that moment. And I could feel that she kind of like landed in her flesh at that point. And of course that's, embodiment is an entire process that is not finished until adulthood, truly. But that moment was like, oh, I've landed. I'm here. Okay. And yeah, I think that of course, like the energy body is developing along with the physical body. And I think I've heard, I've heard several different like explanations of how chakras develop with, of course, with no scientific backing ever, but or Western whatever scientific there's a saying that it's one chakra per year, that the first year is the root, the second year is the sacral, the third year is the solar plexus, and so on. But of course with my work, I'm kind of integrating this body of energy work that we do on using the 7 chakra framework into the 9-centered system that was part of human design. And so yeah, there's some there's a lot that I don't understand or that I haven't figured out yet. But yeah, that root center, like, that's all the same. That's the same function as the solar, as it is in the 7 chakra system, and that's like the connection. That's the place where the physical world meets. Okay, sorry, I have to change the music. This is not working for me. I need more. That's not, I wouldn't call that ambient, my dude. That was very, that was very moving, very dancey. Oh, this album is only 11 minutes long. Okay, so sidebar, of course, I canceled my Spotify, and Apple Music's playlists are just not there. Especially in terms of like remembering what you like. So yeah, okay, we're going back to the ambient sleep playlist, because that's like, anyway, a little digression. Yeah, so a lot of my work, especially on an inner level, is doing this integration of figuring out how to take all of the things that I have learned about the 7 chakra system and apply them into this 9-centered framework, as I have been integrating and experimenting with the 9-centered model, of course, in order to determine if I, how relevant it is for me. And on the whole, I'm pretty sold on it. There's a lot of things that really work well for me with it. And techniques and practices that I learned through a 7-centered lens, that when I apply the 9-centered framework to it, it works better for me. So one of those examples is, of course, the energy work lineage that I'm trained in, like energy healing through the Berkeley Psychic Institute lineage, kind of a grab bag, Western so-called academic framework, but very rigorous and very effective. Both within myself and then also in energy readings and healings and things like that. I've found that when I start to tune into the centers instead of trying to use a chakra model, that I get better results. Then the other area is the 9 rites of the Munai Ki of the Kero Inca lineage, which I received almost 3 years ago. No, yeah. More than 3 years ago. I received the last rite more than 3 years ago. But one of the practices in that tradition is that you receive the rites and they go into your chakras and they're seeds of energy, and then you have to feed them. And you feed them by basically pulling the ki or the energy of whatever element into your centers. And I have been, the last few weeks, I've been using fire and air and water and things to feed my rites again, to kind of because I've been feeling called back to this lineage that I haven't been actively practicing it for most of those 3 years, but I've been feeding my rights again for the first time in a couple of years, and I have been, instead of pulling the energy into the 7 chakras, I've been pulling it into the 9 centers, and it feels so much more solid and aligned, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's right, that's the way it works, at least for me. So yeah, but this root center is really like the root center, the root chakra. This is where so much of the work is, because and I think I speak from the experience of being a white person with European heritage living in the United States and growing up in a middle-class secular family. But there's an aspect of where that root chakra is the last one to truly align as you go through this spiritual awakening, because so much of our heritage, so much of our inheritance is being torn from and being alienated from, and being made to feel unsafe in the land and physical reality, right? Needing to build these artificial walls around ourselves, needing to build these, whether they're physical or mental walls, needing these frameworks of logic and structure in order to create a predictable world around ourselves. And when we really truly anchor into that root and look at what's beneath us and what's supporting us, we often find that there's nothing there, and that it's it feels empty. Or at least that's just something that I've noticed, that I've seen. So yeah, finding that safety is the radical act. That's an act of rebellion, right? Allowing yourself to be in this space of embodiment and like relationship with the earth, with reciprocity. And a lot of the work that the way that I see the root center and the root chakra is being this place of, it's an interface, right? It's a place where our body, which exists in the physical world, but it also kind of has, there's an aspect within our body, of course, that is not physical, right? It's our connection to the spirit and soul. But the place where we interface with the 3D reality in the starkest way is at that root, right? We interface with it at the root and at the throat, primarily. Not exclusively, but primarily. And that root is the place, is the foundation, right? It's a place where that is built upon. So it's not just, there's the element of like downward motion from within the body, of release, descending chi, elimination, of course, right? The byproducts of digestion, pooping, peeing, childbirth. But But then there's also an element of like bringing back up from there. There's an element of taking from the earth in a give and take. And this is another of the practices that I learned from the Moon Key that I need to start doing consistently, that I never actually connected with, was this practice of doing a practice called breath of fire, but part of it is where you source energy from the earth through that pelvic floor. Yeah, so I think maybe I'm ready to take that, to allow that practice to take root in my life again, or for the first time. Yeah, and our root holds like so much more than just our connection with the material, because it is the place where any, like, if there's a leak at the root, then none of our somatic chakras or centers are going to be able to hold their energy, right? That energy is just going to drain down. So we get, not just stories, but the deep physical somatic sensation of loss and of scarcity and of lack of worth and lack of support. Things that would normally be ascribed to other chakras and other centers in the body. But if you have a leaky root, if your root is not in reciprocity with the earth, giving and receiving in the same amounts, then all of that energy that is, coming in and I mean, we're always taking in and releasing energy from our environment, but we can't we're going to continue to drain it if we don't have like a give and take and a balance at the root. Moving quite a bit there. Yeah, that's some deep sense, some stories of what it's safe to do, who it's safe to be, who it's safe to be with. All of those stories. And of course, if you have ever been pregnant, carried a pregnancy, given birth, no matter whether that birth was through the root chakra or through the sacral center, that root is never, it's never the same again after that. Not that that's a bad thing necessarily. Often it brings more awareness and more strength, but it's a new level of relationship with that center. Oh. Yeah, so what are you noticing as you're listening to this? If you are able to do this work in from a meditative state and able to receive this as a transmission rather than just listening, it's fine if you're just listening. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are able to be connected and doing, receiving the energy work component of these recordings, what's your root telling you, right? How is it communicating your needs to you? One thing I'm really getting here is understanding like the sacrum as that keystone of the arch, and having the give and take of the left and the right legs, and then of course the left and the right sides of the pelvis, kind of in this this dance, doing this almost like a figure eight or an infinity movement, kind of weaving the energy across that center line where the energy center is, and where, especially in pelvises of people who have physical wombs, or did have physical wombs, or are towards the more estrogen dominant side of the spectrum, there's kind of a lot of empty space in the pelvis, in the root center, right? It doesn't correlate to a place where there's a bone. It correlates to a place where there's no bone. And as the place that our energetic foundation is built upon, this can feel kind of deeply unsettling to somebody who is very Saturn dominant and who has a need for things to be rock solid and hard and concrete. Yeah, and this is going back to a lot of work that I'm doing right now, and work that the collective is doing, and as we're all kind of in this moment of coming into the Saturn-Neptune conjunction early next year, and realizing that our bones are Saturn, of course, and that they are the places where the field of standing wave potential that is governed by Neptune has kind of coalesced into solidity, into the earth element, right? If the bones are, the earth of the earth within the body. Then the rest of the body, the waters, the sound waves, the harmonies, the frequencies, the standing waves are largely that. Most of that is Neptune. Of course, Uranus is in there too, as the zaps and the zings and the electromagnetic and electric potential. But yeah, Neptune being not just the way that our bodies produce bone at the junctures of these standing waveforms, but also the way that our bodies kind of come forth and come into being, right? As we each of us is a collection of particles and of, single-celled organisms and a coalition of more sophisticated cells that are continuing to decide to be a self and to form a body and to hold together in such a way that our mind and our soul can have so that our mind and our soul can open the door to the glove box for God to come in. And when I say glove box, I don't mean like the one you have in your car. I mean like the type that you would find in a laboratory setting where there's, I used this metaphor in another episode of this. I think I can't remember which one, but if you think of like the type of like apparatus you would find in a lab where they're working on, really toxic chemicals or viruses or something like that, you have this like notion of a glove box, which is essentially like a window that has gloves built into it, right? And so you're looking into this space that has, extremely good ventilation and filtration and very specific environmental conditions for this, whatever it is, like cell culture or, highly reactive chemical or whatever. But you put your arms into these gloves, into the box, and then you can manipulate the experiment through that. And so you can think of yourself as being a glove box for God, right? Or for whatever your form of your supreme being of choice, whatever word you choose for that, soul, universe, the source, right? And I said I dropped a pin a while back, or I don't think I actually said that I was dropping a pin, but I did. When I mentioned that the root center and the throat center are the places where we primarily interact with the three-dimensional world. And I want to come back to that because I can tell that there's a question popping up that somebody listening is just like, wait a second, the throat? And yes, because the two primary places where we interact with the earth are our hands and our feet, right? And then our rear end, right? Our butt. And right now I'm sitting in my bed and I'm oh yeah, I forgot to say this at the beginning. So I prefer to have feet flat on a surface. And so if you're sitting in bed with me, or sitting on the floor or something like that, you'll probably want to have your feet flat on that surface as well, or you can sit in a chair with your feet on the floor. This helps with the root center connection. When you sit cross-legged in the traditional meditation position, you're really kind of dissociating from the earth, from the physical plane. And if you're doing energy work that is more anchored in the 3D, then having these this tripod of contact with your feet and your root is really helpful for energy flow. Yeah, I'm just dealing with a really big knot of energy in my root center right now, and trying to get to a point where I can release that and let that go. Okay. Yeah, and then our throat center, right? We think of our throat center as being the place where we express ourselves, where we talk, right? Where our voice exists. But it's so much more than that, right? It's like talking and speech is such a tiny component of what the throat center is capable of and what it is supposed to do. That, I mean, yes, obviously, if you are blocked in that area, then, you know, learning to find words and express yourself verbally is very important. But your throat is also attached to your arms and to your ears, right? Your arms and your hands. Follow those nerves up into the spinal cord. Where do they meet? At the throat. And then your ears have, like, the physical tunnel of the ear goes into the throat, right behind the eardrum. Like, there's this hole in the side of your skull, and then there's a drum, and then there's a outlet into your throat, and then there's the other, you know, the other bits of the inner ear, with the little tiny bones and the little snail shell full of water and funny little cells, and but yeah, that's all part of your throat center, all governed by the throat center energetically. And so yeah, that's the other place where you interact with the 3D world predominantly. And there is a very real resonance, and this I'm going to credit a few of my childbirth educators, including the amazing Siobhan Dioris, who, if you're not following her, you need to be. But there's a striking parallel between the anatomy of the vocal cords and the anatomy of the throat and the anatomy of the pelvis and the pelvic floor muscles in particular. Like, it's a really striking parallel. And so they're both these places where we've developed this interesting apparatus of creating tension while also letting flow, right? And in the pelvic floor, it's, you know, these kind of series of muscles that are centered around a few orifices and can kind of pull them tight and shut them, or they can relax to loosen and open them. And then in the throat, it's actually kind of a very similar anatomy, but we just don't see, you know, we don't see our vocal cords all that often, but they're very, very similar. And I think a lot of people will tend to associate the pelvic floor with the sacral chakra, especially in terms of its role in, because of its role in childbirth and sex and things like that. But I think that that's not necessarily correct. I see the pelvic floor as being synonymous with the root center. Of course, there's also resonance with the sacral center, with the throat, but the root is really like, that's where those muscles, those pelvic floor muscles are. That's where that connection with materiality, like where our energetic being comes into contact with that which exists outside of our bodies. So yeah, that makes perfect sense, that when a baby comes out and goes, ah, then that's part of their, like, that's kind of the, I'm not sure if it's what, like if it's a cause and effect, or if it's just a coincidence that those, and I mean coincidence in the, like, the most basic sense of the word, not in like, oh, what a coincidence, or that there's no connection, but most in truly that they are coincident, that they are happening at the same time, of, you know, that first scream, that first cry, and the kind of because in order to really put your back into it, and to really, like, create the bellows, the force that moves the air through the vocal cords, you're closing the pelvic floor. I can't make too much noise because it's after bedtime, and we've got a sleeping toddler in the next room. But yeah, that really lands for me. Oh, yeah, I'm just going to give myself some gentle movement right now because I've been sitting still for a while, and yeah, my bones, my bones. But yeah, that was a breakthrough for me the other day, of like realizing, like, oh, holy hell, that piriformis has, like, literally just been clenched for over a decade. Of course, not made any better by having given birth a couple of years ago, but preceding that for sure. And kind of finally learning how to connect with that muscle, and how to, like, say, like, okay, hey, because of all, like, I'm like pretty good with my mind-body connection. I have a pretty good relationship with most of my, like, skeletal muscles, that I can, like, I have a pretty, like, I'm able to connect with a large number of them. But the piriformis was new for me. It was just like, oh, that's where that is. And even now, like, it's hard for me to clench it, and it's hard for me to consciously clench it. I can consciously release it, and then I can kind of clench around it, and then notice that it is clenched. But yeah, that's one thing I'm working on, is like releasing it every time I notice that it's clenched. And wouldn't you know, that hip pain that I've had for a decade it's getting better. So I guess you can teach old dogs new tricks. Yeah. I'm we're just feeling into that, the energy that we've been talking about, the root and the throat, and just seeing if there's anything else that wants to be said. I don't think so, but I'm going to do some gentle windshield wiper movements with my knees. Kind of moving towards doing like a 90-90 hip flow type of thing, but just gentle, like in and out stretches right now. Just saying that out loud in case that sounds like something that feels supportive to you, because we've been doing a lot of root center energy work here. And yeah, if this feels complete, we're just gonna take a moment to kind of find a place of reciprocity with that grounding cord. And I think this is something that's been missing from my energy work practice, and the ways that I learned from my teachers is that we would kind of just leave that grounding cord releasing all the time, and we never really talked about receiving back from, like, in the lineage that I'm trained in, we run earth energy up through our legs, and we source earth energy through there, but there's never, the grounding cord itself is always, it's always a drain. And I think that there is a, at least how I've been taught. And I think that having a, like really leaning into the support and allowing the support to be also like a give, like a source of energy, not just a sink, could help with some of the chronic pain problems that I have. And also, I think some of the energetic and like reciprocity problems that we have with the land as children of colonizers and colonized people ourselves. So I'm just kind of taking a moment to kind of feel into what that looks like, to feel more held and more supported by that, by the earth at the root. And then I'm also going to, of course, replenish myself from the crown using the golden sun technique. So imagining a golden sun right above the top of the head, right above the crown center, and allowing that golden sun to grow bigger and brighter, sourcing all of the energy that you need right now, calling in anything that you have released that is ready to come back to you, anything that is meant for you, and anything that you need at this moment. Allowing that golden sun to grow bigger and brighter, and then when it is very large and full and bright, then you can allow it to make contact with the top of your head and kind of spill its entire contents down into the energy body, down into the physical body, flushing this warm, gentle, golden, syrupy sunlight all through the body, physical body, and energy body, and just allowing yourself to bask in that energy, and feel that it's not just immediately leaking out of that root. Okay, well, that feels like a place to close. And so, yeah, this one kind of took on a little different flavor than a lot of the previous sessions, but this has been fun. So I think we might be doing more of these. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Good night and good luck.